Everyone listening to this show over the age of, I don't know, whatever the age, knows the theme to Dr. Zhivago, the movie. Just listen for a minute. I'm setting the stage. We're going to try and have a Trump-free day. We're going to have a free day today, a day of thought instead of a day of reaction. I know it's impossible in talk radio to not react. So everyone's seen the movie at some point. They know the theme. They know the novel was written by Boris Pasternak, the great Russian author. David Lean film, great director who did Bridge on the River Kwai and Peter O'Toole's great movie set in the desert there, whatever his name was. So we all saw Dr. Zhivago. We were all moved by it. It's still one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's about communism and what happened in Russia after the communists took over, the Bolsheviks to be specific. And the most telling scene, of course, to me, was them going back to their villa, a big, beautiful villa that the family had owned, and finding out that in each room there were poor people living, cooking on the floor, sleeping on the beds. And the owners of the house were put into the basement of the house by the Bolsheviks. And you're saying it can't happen here. You are mistaken. What you don't know is that we're living through a mass hysteria. My phrase, I didn't create the phrase mass hysteria, but it's on everyone's lips. Even the great Rush Limbaugh accidentally blurted out the words mass hysteria today. People are talking about it. They know it's my new book coming out. I see the publisher moved up the pub date to October 9th. If it was out now, it'd be number one. But the issue is we're living through mass hysteria right now, especially with regard to the Trump derangement syndrome, but not specifically limited to that. So in my great historical book coming out, as I say, in October, I trace the history of mass hysteria and try to put this in context by pointing out America's insanity going back to the Salem witch trials all the way through the Trump witch hunt to the Russian collusion mass hysteria. And I take you down a history road together. Together we go. And I'm not going to talk much more about the book because it would be a preamble that's too far in advance. But I want to talk about the coming socialism and ask you, if the communists took over America, and many of them are already in very prominent positions, notably we have a former communist who was put into the CIA, John Brennan, by Barack Hussein, whatever his name was, Obama, who was an overt crypto-communist who's done very well indeed, like all leaders of any communist party have always done. Obama came to do good, and he did very, very well indeed. Like all communists, they wind up on top. But I'm going to ask you something. Two things, actually. Why do you think the phrase mass hysteria is suddenly catching fire? And number two, what would you do if the far left took control of the United States government? Have you made backup plans? I know very intelligent people who are talking about moving out of America should the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democrat Party prevail. You say that's hysterical, it can't happen. You're wrong. It's happened in other nations, and it can't happen here. And we know what they stand for. Do you know what they stand for? Well, they have a young lady named Cortez, which is easy to remember instead of the whole name job. I don't know why people need three names, three last names. Just think of her as the conquistador's granddaughter, Cortez, the kid from Queens, who speaks like a college girl. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of millions of idiots like her, useful idiots who don't know what they're talking about. And so they want free housing for all, free health care for all, free college education for all, free transportation for all. They want the abolition of ICE, which would be no immigration or customs control. They want the abolition of prisons, meaning they want people released from prisons. You see, every rapist who's in there, they weren't really committing a rape. What they were doing was just trying to, upset the apple cart, get even with an evil system. They want rapists released, murderers released. They call for everyone to receive a basic income. Now that's going on in Chicago and other cities, whether or not they work. So these are some of the platforms of the far left, and this disease, this mass hysteria, was begun in this country most recently by Bernie the Seltzer Man Sanders, who is the most dangerous political figure in American history. Far more dangerous than any ever seen before because he looks so harmless, doesn't he, like a Jewish grandfather. Like everyone's favorite floppy grandfather, doesn't he? Old Bernie Sanders. Looks like he can do no harm, but he can do much harm indeed. He's already unleashed this Cortez person on us. And listen to her in clip 3. Listen to how brazen she is becoming.
I come at it from a very pragmatic lens. I didn't read a book one day and was like, oh, I guess I'm a socialist. It was like, okay, well, I believe in healthcare for all. I believe in education for all. I believe in housing as a human right. And then if people are going to call me a socialist for believing in those things, like, all right, call me a socialist. Like, I don't give a damn.
See, this could run America. It's possible. You say very unlikely. Yeah, but possible. Because there are many idiots like her who think that these things come for free. And so I go back again to Dr. Zhivago, the Boris Pasternak novel. And again, I ask you the key question. If you want to play it, maybe you're golfing or you're on a ski boat. I don't know what you're doing this summer. But don't think I'm going to start talking again about the conference or the meeting in Helsinki and what he did and what he didn't and he this and that. I would like to ask you, is it time for Donald Trump to stop talking and tweeting for 2 weeks? Can he please go on vacation? Just for 1 second, this is kind, friendly advice from Michael Savage, who wrote Trump's War. Mr. Trump, would you please take a 2-week vacation? Nixon went on Baby Rebozo's yacht and didn't say a word. He waved from the back of the yacht. Reagan went to his ranch and chopped wood and waved at the idiot reporters. He didn't engage with them. Can you name another president who never took a vacation and never stopped engaging with the hostile left-wing press? I can't think of one. So I say, Mr. President, please already stop for 2 weeks. You deserve a vacation. I know I do. I'm going to take one very soon. Now, whether it'll be chopping wood or sitting on the back of someone's yacht, I can't say. I don't know yet. But the issue is, at a point in everyone's life, you need to quiet down. You need to calm down. You need to calm yourself down, calm the nation down, calm the world down. But today I'm not taking a vacation. Today I'm very much engaged with you, the audience. And I'm talking about a very important problem, which is the growing left wing in America. And if you think that it can't happen here, then you're really asleep. And I'm trying to awaken you to what they stand for, what they want to do. Then what you see and what you hear may sound reasonable, by the way. Oh, well, I can see universal health care. Well, we already have it, by the way. We already have universal health care. We have communist medicine in America. Free public college education? It's largely free anyway right now. What do you mean it's not free? What do you think city colleges are? It's free public education. The other stuff, the universal housing, you mean free housing? How's that going to work? Where's that going to come from? Well, let's see. All you liberals living in the suburbs in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home whose children have left you, you'd be living in one of your bedrooms if you're lucky, and the other 2 bedrooms would be inhabited by illegal aliens, let us say in the MS-13 gang, or their wives or children would be in there, or bums from the streets would be using your bathrooms and your kitchen. There you go. There's your universal housing. That's how it works in communist systems. The abolition of the U.S. Senate, she calls for, if you can believe this. The abolition of prisons. So they want to release murderers, rapists, mass murderers, mass rapists out of prisons. Everyone will receive a basic income, whether they work or not. Isn't that great? Now, if you've raised children, which most of these leftists haven't because they're not family-oriented people, they don't have the guts to be a family man or a family woman. They don't have the ability to be a family person, which takes real hard work. If you ever raise children and you give them something for nothing, they become worthless. You have to teach a child the value of money, as I was taught as a child. I used to be told over and over again, Michael, I want you to learn the value of money. My father used to say that to me. Now, my friends, by the way, didn't come from such a harsh background. Maybe they did okay. Maybe they didn't. But I was taught the value of money. I had to work for whatever money I had, whether it was in a candy store washing dishes or working in my father's basement, doing horrendous work that a Bowery bum wouldn't do. I learned hard work as a young child, and it stuck with me to this age, to this day. I really don't know anything else. I'm not a man of leisure. I must admit I do not play golf. I must admit I do not play tennis. I must admit that I am not like the average middle American, which is not to say golf or tennis is a bad thing, but I don't play them. But the fact is that hard work is required for a child to get some character and some values. It's that simple. So, for example, if you have a house and you want your son or your daughter to, let's say, leaf blow the front steps or the driveway, and you give them $5 to do it, what's wrong with that? Tell me what's wrong with that. I remember I told you the story. I had a friend who's become I don't know what he is now. I haven't kept in touch with him for 40 years. I gave my son a couple of bucks to clean my driveway. And this guy, who was always communistically oriented, because he didn't have the brains or guts to be a capitalist, eventually became a doctor for the free drugs. He liked to get into the cabinet of the free drugs, and that's why he went into medicine. He had a doctor friend who used to use all the drugs, and he thought that was so neat that you can write your own prescriptions or steal the drugs out of the hospital. He liked that. Well, I haven't kept in touch with him, but he got mad at me for giving my son money to clean the driveway. He said, "You'll ruin the child." Well, I hope his son has done as well as mine, but he certainly didn't ruin my child by teaching him to do that, nor to work in Burger King in a pretty marginal neighborhood when he was 14 years old by taking a bus into this marginal neighborhood to work in Burger King. I don't think he liked it, but he didn't complain. My son was never a complainer, and he's done very well in life. He's learned the value of money. He's worked very hard all of his life. So if you give a child something for nothing, like an unlimited allowance, what happens to that child? What do they become? By and large, they become, well, okay, I can't generalize. How's that? I don't think they become as productive in their own lives and as strong in their own lives as need be than if you pay them or they learn to work from a very young age. So when you talk about a free basic income, which is being done in some small cities in America, in California, and now in Chicago, a basic income, whether or not they work, who do you think of? Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, or Bernie Sanders? When you hear about universal housing and health care, it sounds good, doesn't it? Who is going to pay for that? When you hear about free public college education, free transportation, the abolition of ICE, getting rid of the U.S. Senate, emptying out the prisons like emptying out the Bastille, what you're hearing is the rhetoric of this Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and the others on the left wing. And so if the socialists were working to take over the Democrat Party by pushing them further and further and further to the left, if the socialists should win and take over this country, take over its economy, what do you think would happen in your life? You probably haven't even thought about it because most of you think it's too far-fetched to ever happen. But I will remind you it has happened in other countries that were once doing fairly well. You don't have to look any further than Venezuela. It was once a thriving middle class, and they once had a thriving middle class. And then what happened? A brutal dictator was installed with fake elections. And then what happened? The economy started to collapse. And then what happened? The middle class fled to Miami and elsewhere. Many of them listened to this program because they're afraid what they saw there is happening here. Just as former people who lived under the Soviet bloc, under the Iron Curtain, who moved to this country many years ago, they know what happens when socialism takes over. And so, again, maybe this is too esoteric for you, maybe it isn't. But all I know is that intrigues me, which is why I'm talking about it. And I want to go back to the main questions and ask you to call 855-400-7282. The first question was, why is the phrase mass hysteria suddenly catching fire, where even Rush Limbaugh is blurting it out by accident? And what would you do if the far left takes control of the United States? Do you have plans? I'll be right back.
Savage.
I didn't say collusion. I didn't say Trump. I didn't say Mueller. I didn't say Putin. I didn't say Helsinki. And the brains are so washed, that's all they want to hear. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to complain to you. No one's forcing me to be on the radio. So I won't do what I don't want to do. I will not do it. It's time already to move on. Can we move on to something else? Our brains, you know what's happening to our IQ from doing this? It's diminishing every day by about 5 to 7 points, over and over and over again, like it's the whole world. What the left wing wants us to be talking about. Can I talk about Dr. Zhivago, where they'd actually lead us if we don't understand where they're trying to lead us to? I would vouchsafe a bet that if I talked about what I ate for dinner last night, my audience would be larger than if I talked about Dr. Zhivago and the coming left-wing revolution. How's that? If I told you my vision of the world through a lobster's claw, like last night I had a lobster. I never eat the poor things. I always feel bad for them, whatever. But I know they're dead anyway. I always justify it. So it's dead anyway. It's in there. So I bought one last night. I had one in a restaurant. No butter. And it's one of the most delicious meat on the planet. But as I was gnawing on the flesh, I looked at the claw. This powerful lobster claw with the teeth. You ever seen the lobster claw? So I said, look at evolution. This animal is so beautifully evolved with a hard shell around its soft flesh and two claws that no human could ever match, and wound up in a cooking pot anyway. So what does that tell you about all the tough guys out there who think that they're immortal and no one can touch them? It tells you that brains have always ruled the world and always will.
Savage.
I'm not like Zhivago. I'm more like Zorba the Greek. I'm like the living embodiment of the Zorba character in Kazanzaki's novel. You understand that or not? Remember that great scene in Zorba the Greek where he leans out of the window in his last day and he's holding on to the windowsill looking out at the horizon. He says to the girl, turns around and he says, played by Anthony Quinn, a man like me should live 1,000 years and then he dies. What a great, great story that is. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I can't promise you that. Could you play Chocolate, please? I'm just not in the mood to engage. We're into the slow dance portion now. Well, socialism is in the air. Everyone thinks it's something brand new. The morons, the drug-addicted college generation, has no idea that socialism has been tried. It's always failed, never worked anywhere. Now you'll tell me about Finland, okay? You know what? You don't know anything about Finland. The reason it works there is because the North Sea oil keeps producing money. You understand that? We don't have oil offshore to produce a universal basic freeloading system for a bunch of bums like you. And the reason it's failed everywhere it's been tried is because you have to use other people's money to make it work. And as Margaret Thatcher famously said, socialism is a great system until you run out of other people's money. Get it? And yet you get people coming along like the Seltzer Man, Bernie Sanders, Union Square commie, New York style, knew the type as a child. Everyone had a bad cousin or uncle like him with a dirty suit, bad shoes, bad wife, no car, rode the subway, couldn't get to first base, lived underneath the L somewhere in the Bronx, a miserable human being, never had a decent job in his life, resented everybody else in the family. His tie was stained, the shirt was stained, the suit was stained, and he always talked about communism. And now look where he is, making over $1 million a year, selling it to the useful children, the useful idiot children, who have grown up being brainwashed into thinking that this has never been tried before. Look how far he's come. Look how far he has come. But that brings me back to the basic issue of the day, which is, do you fear the far left? What if they do take control of the U.S. after the Donald Trump first couple of years? I mean, let's go to November together, right? Let's just go to November together. It's a big deal. They're all fighting now over the midterms. The Dems and Repubs are fighting like crazy over the midterms. So the Dems smell blood. There's blood in the water. And they think that they got a chance to take over 100 seats in the House to unseat Republicans. And by the way, a lot of Republicans are retiring or have retired. They've done their own internal polls, and they're just bailing. They don't want to lose. So they figure they get out while the getting is good. So it's not bad enough that straight-out Democrats might take control, but we're talking about the far-left maniac wing of the Democrat Party might take control. And then what happens? What's going to happen to you? Forget about what would happen to the Republican Party, what would happen to Donald Trump. It's a given they would impeach him, and that'll go nowhere. It'll be just like Clinton all over again. We have a party of dummies, a country of dummies, and I mean the political class. They're amongst the stupidest people in the country. If they were legitimate and had a brain, they wouldn't be in politics. They'd be in business, or they'd be in something else, another walk of life, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, something, a talk show host. Why would anyone go into politics unless they couldn't make it in anything else? Who else does it attract when you think about it? So what I'm saying to you is it's hopeless no matter what happens in a certain regard. By and large, it's a hopeless, dumb system.